thanks for stopping by. If you're new here, my name is Tanya. Welcome. Today, I'm going to talk you through the process of starting zonal geraniums from seed and sharing how I care for these beautiful plants as houseplants during the winter. But first, let's talk about what makes geraniums so unique and a little confusing, actually, when it comes to their name and history. So the plants we call zonal geraniums are actually Pelargonium exhortarum, not true geraniums at all. Here's where it gets interesting. The name geranium comes from the Greek word geranos, which means crane, because the seed pods themselves look just like a crane's beak. But at some point in the 1700s, Carl Linnaeus, a famous Swedish botanist, mistakenly placed pelargoniums in the geranium family, and somehow that name stuck. So was it because geranium was easier to say or more familiar? Nobody really knows for sure, but even after another botanist, Charles Lertier, corrected the classification in 1789, people continued calling pelargoniums geraniums, so that's the name we still use today. To make this even more fascinating, zonal geraniums are native to South Africa and were brought to Europe by the Dutch in the early 1700s. So they've come a long way to be one of the most popular garden plants in the world. So now that we've covered their history, let's get into how to grow these versatile plants from seed. For this project, you'll need seed starting mix, a bucket or a container to mix and moisten the seed starting mix, as well as some seed trays or seed cells, my geranium seeds, and then also not pictured here is a humidity dome, which I will cover these seeds once they are planted. So go ahead and put your seed starting mix into your bucket or container and moisten that with water. You want to make sure that it is sticking together but not drenching so much that it is dripping water. That's really not an ideal condition for seeds and really can lead to damp off, which is a fungus. So with this consistency, you want to make sure that it's nice and clumped together, kind of like a dough if you think about it that way, where the dough is nicely mixed together, nothing is dripping, but nothing is crumbling. So here I've added more water, and now it's kind of really reached the consistency I'm looking for after mixing it around for some time. You'll notice that when I put it in my fist, it's really a nice consistency. It doesn't fall apart and it holds together nicely, ideally suited for seeds. Next, go ahead and get your seed cells and begin to fill the soil in the cells. You'll notice here that I really make sure that I am tamping down the soil as much as possible to prevent any air pockets from occurring in each individual cell. Air pockets are not great for seeds because they kind of contribute to those dry conditions and can really inhibit the germination process from happening. So here I'm just filling up these cells. These are 4 by 4 inch square cells, and these are slightly larger than the typical 2-inch size cells. And I like these because I find that I don't have to pot up the seedlings as quickly as I do with 2-inch cells. So just something to keep in mind if you're shopping around and looking for new seed cell trays. I do like these 4-inchers because they just allow me that much more time with my seedling as it is growing. Potting up is quite a bit of work and takes a bit of time and commitment. So if that's something that I can avoid for as long as possible, I do like to do that. Here I'm just finishing up tamping down all of the cells, and I'm really just making sure that there are no air pockets. So you'll see I'm backfilling some cells where I noticed there was a little bit room after I pushed down on it. And this again is just to prevent any dry spells from occurring within each individual cell. Here I am planting the Geranium Maverick Apple Blossom seed, which is a beautiful white pink color, and all of the information that I need is on the back of this packet, which includes the seed depth, lighting requirements, and all of that. So this particular seed only likes to be planted 1/8 of an inch deep. So you'll notice that I'm just planting it on the surface. You can see those tiny white dots. And I do that because 1/8 of an inch really is not deep at all. So I'm just going to lightly cover this with soil at the end. I want to avoid planting these too deep because that can also inhibit germination as well. And I want to make sure that I get these seedlings up and started and growing as quickly as possible. At this point, I am just lightly covering each cell with soil equaling about 1/8 of an inch. You really just want to cover the seeds with a very thin layer of soil, and that ensures that they're just below the surface, which will be the ideal condition for them to germinate. Next, I am misting each cell with water, and this really just ensures that these seeds are moist and have the ideal moisture environment to allow them to germinate. Next, I'll go ahead and add a thin layer of vermiculite, and vermiculite really helps with moisture retention, especially when seeds are very close to the surface. It really prevents them from drying out very quickly. Oftentimes when seeds are really close to the surface, I have to water them many times a day, so vermiculite helps me not have to do that. Next, I place them under the grow lights and on top of a heat mat. Notice I have the humidity dome placed on top, and this really ensures that the seeds are at the ideal humidity and temperature to germinate. Geraniums prefer anywhere between 70 to 75 degrees, so the heat mat kicks it up just a notch and gives them the perfect environment. Once your geraniums are established, they're easy to care for year-round. Let's talk about 2 ways to overwinter them, as houseplants or in a dormant state. If you want to enjoy your geraniums indoors, they make fantastic houseplants, as you can see here, with just a few simple care steps. So number 1, lighting. I have these under grow lights, but optionally you can place your geraniums in a sunny window. Bright, direct sunlight will prevent your geraniums from reaching for light, otherwise known as becoming leggy. So this way they have strong stems and there aren't long stems that occur. Bright light really is essential to keep them healthy and blooming during the winter months. Water really only when the soil feels dry, about an inch down. Geraniums don't like sitting in wet soil, especially during winter. So overwatering can lead to root rot. You want to apply a water-soluble fertilizer once every 2 weeks or so. This ensures the plants receive the proper nutrients and have a glossy foliage and bright blooms, as you can see here. You want to regularly remove any yellowing leaves or spent blooms to keep the plant looking fresh and healthy. Pruning leggy growth can really also help maintain a compact shape. So a fun fact about geraniums is that they are actually day neutral plants, which means that they don't rely on specific day lengths to bloom. This is why they can continue to flower indoors, even during the shorter days of winter, which is a lovely bonus to brighten your home, right? So with these tips, your geraniums will thrive indoors and they'll add a pop of color to your home all winter long. So this is a geranium that I've overwintered under grow lights downstairs in my basement, and it is looking beautiful. It's really compact. There are a few spots in the back though that I do want to trim up and just maintain. So here you can see some brown leaves, and I want to go ahead and cut these back. The thing about keeping geraniums under grow lights, or really any plant for that matter, is that you really can't expose the entire plant to grow lights. So sometimes the under canopy or an area in the back that isn't exposed to as much light might suffer a little bit, like in this case. So these are some brown leaves that I'm just going to clean up and really just remove. I'm also going to inspect the plant for any legginess that I happen to see. If I can see it reaching for light, I'm going to go ahead and cut that away. I really don't see any leggy behavior going on. A good indication of legginess would be kind of a really long stem without any foliage on it, and it just looks kind of out of shape. This is an odd shaped geranium, but I quite like it. It's actually grown quite wide, so it has a very broad shape, but I think it's really quite beautiful from the front here. I just think that is gorgeous. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it, especially because the thing about geraniums is that they grow so quickly that even if I cut this back in a month or so, it will really grow and rebound so fast in time to put outside, which is what my plan is. So in this case, these are full of blooms. These do receive water-soluble fertilizer every 2 weeks or so. And I just really make sure that I am consistent with that. That way I always have blooms in the winter time, which, you know, in the dead of winter, if you live in the Northern Hemisphere and you're exposed to really cold climates, this is such a treat. And it's just really nice. And the thing that is so wonderful about geraniums is that, like I said, they grow really quickly. So, you know, even if you were to cut it back, they rebound so fast. So here again, I'm going to go ahead and just remove some of the dead leaves, inspect it for any diseased or damaged branches or stems that I might want to cut away. And you also want to remove any spent blooms. That's what these look like. These are, you know, deadheaded, they're spent blooms. Geraniums do require pretty frequent deadheading. I'd say that really is the only disadvantage to this plant, is that the spent blooms do not naturally fall and then are pushed out by new growth. The spent blooms will just kind of hang on. And so, you know, it's just kind of a regular maintenance item that I incorporate into my pots when I have geraniums in my garden. So, but other than that, the plant is pretty much consistently in bloom at all times, especially in the summer months when it's exposed to full sun outdoors. It pushes these blooms and they get about the size of a tennis ball. It's really quite striking, and what a fun sight to see. So I'll have these in hanging baskets or outside my yard in the landscape. And the great thing about geraniums is that they are also rabbit resistant. So if you have rabbit pressure in your yard, which I do, these are a great alternative to, let's say, petunias, which, for example, do suffer when rabbits are around them. Rabbits will eat them, and that is really no fun, especially when you've invested a lot of money in annuals. So I highly recommend these plants. If you don't have the space or light to keep your geraniums as houseplants, there's another alternative though, and you can actually store them in a dormant state over winter. So here's a couple reasons why it works. Zonal geraniums have really thick woody stems, and woody stems that store enough energy and moisture, allowing them to survive dormancy. So this trait makes them really uniquely suited for overwintering. So I actually did a video about this back in the fall where I showed how I dig up my geraniums before a really hard frost comes on, and I shake off the soil as much as possible from the roots, trim back the excess foliage, leaving about 6 inches of stem or so. And then I wrap the plants loosely in newspaper or place them in a brown paper bag, and I store them in a cool, dark place that's dry, like a basement or a garage, where temperatures stay anywhere between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So the maintenance during dormancy is largely hands-off, but you do want to check the plants occasionally to ensure that the stems aren't drying out completely. If they feel really shriveled, mist them lightly with water to rehydrate them. And then to reawaken them in the spring, you can rehydrate the roots simply by soaking them in water for a few hours, then replant them in fresh potting soil. And then you gradually reintroduce them to light and resume regular watering. And this method is a great way to save your geraniums for next year without needing a really bright sunny spot indoors. So as you can see, this one takes up quite a bit of space. And if you don't have this, then you can use this dormancy method. Here are my geraniums that I'm overwintering. One of them is in a Home Depot garbage bag and the other is in a box. Let me go ahead and pull these out and show you. Here are my overwinter geraniums that I am storing in a box in my basement in a cool, dry area. As you can see, the stems here are very thick. They're very woody, but look at that. They are still green. And in fact, there's even some little growth on there, which I think is just amazing. I just lightly scraped away the dirt from the roots and basically put them in this box. And the reason that these survive, again, is because of their woody stems and their fibrous root systems that allows them to survive for long periods of time without water in a dormant state. This is fantastic for when you have large quantities of plants like geraniums or dahlias or any other type of plant like alocasias, colocacias that can survive in a dormant state, because it allows you to have that many more in your garden without the burden of trying to keep them alive over winter if you don't have a really sunny location in your house that can house that many plants. This is about 4 or 5 geranium plants that I dug up in the fall and put in this box, and they are fairly large established plants already. So that's pretty exciting. It really allows me to have that many more plants in my garden without the requirements of bright, direct sunlight. And here is another bag. This is just a lawn bag that I have from Home Depot where I have stored probably about, 10, 15 geraniums that I'm overwintering. And here you can see down here in the bag, the leaves are all pretty spent, but the roots themselves are again fibrous, and the stems are actually holding quite a bit of color, which I'm a little surprised about. I may spray some water down here. Here's a perfect example of a stem that is slightly shriveled. If you see this, you want to mist it finely with water because it may be an indication that it is just too dry and the plant cannot withstand that. So that is a learning for me that I will go ahead and do that. In fact, I will do that right now. Let's do it together. In this case, I'm just going to lightly spray into the bag here to dampen some of those branches that I saw were a little too dry for my liking. And this is basically all I'm going to do. Geraniums really are truly remarkable plants with a fascinating history and the ability to brighten your garden and home all year long. Whether you're growing them from seed or keeping them as houseplants, I highly recommend these. They're absolutely beautiful and they come in a wide array of colors. Have you tried overwintering your geraniums before, or are you thinking about starting them from seed? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more gardening tips and tricks. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.